Well, this is Patrick with Qdabra Software today, and today I'm very happy to be talking with Bob Harford, who is CEO of Pulsate, who's working with Atomic Wave, or is from Atomic Wave, and we're talking about a success story that we did 2 years ago with their team to move them off of InfoPath. Thanks so much, Bob, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and let's actually talk a little bit about the history behind this on slide 2 there. Let's just quickly go over what we're going to show people today, or to talk about the story. So you guys have been in business there since 2007. You know, you're branching off from Atomic Wave and just creating Pulsate just this year, right?
Correct.
That's great. And you had SharePoint since 2010, and you've been our customer since 2013. Time flies.
That's right. Yep. We first implemented your product, which got approved at the Department of Homeland Security, where we were an on-site contractor. Now and for a long time, we still used it there, and then we used it internally as well at Potomac Wave.
And you know, the 50 templates, that's 50 form templates with thousands of data files underneath them, right?
It's probably a couple 100,000.
Wow.
At this point.
Yeah. And you know, so the migration process was, well, we'll talk about it in a second, but you're able to get down to 30 minutes per form template, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That's awesome. And who are the people involved? Let's go to slide 3 and look at these our colleagues here. So on our side, we had Joanne, and you tapped Rachel to lead the process after you initially helped configure it, right?
That's right.
Rachel's
yep. So we had a series of I started out as much of a beginner as you can be, and then Joanne took me through some very basic, simple forms that we recorded on Zoom. So then, which was very helpful. So we'd go through some baby steps. It's recorded, so then I could go back to the recording and walk through it on my own, and eventually got up to some functioning forms that work well for us.
That's great. Full disclosure, though, you're a SQL stud, right? For lack of a better word.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Oh, well, I am a what is that? Microsoft certified IT professional. So in SQL Server Business Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So this area was new to me.
For the listeners, they're going to want to know that the fact that you had so much knowledge of SQL was significant in this process, and then we helped with some of the config on the Active Directory, I believe, to make sure the connection to SharePoint was still valid. Let's actually talk about the before after. Let's go to the next slide, and so we had you're going from SharePoint 2010 with an early version of DBXL and InfoPath Form Services and SQL Server, and now you're on you're still using SharePoint for the dashboard, but not for the storage. You've got our Qdabra Forms Viewer and the latest version of DBXL, plus just the same SQL Server that you had. No, it's probably not 2012 anymore. It's probably more recent, right?
Well, we use, no, our main site is still 2012. We're looking to get off that fairly soon, but we use, for some parts of our work, we're using SQL Server 2019.
Great. And let's go to the next slide and just talk about the 1, 2, 3 here in terms of the steps. As installed it, you had some complexity with the ADFS stuff that Jimmy on our side helped out with. And then we created this reusable thing that allowed you to turn this crank on these form templates faster. That this is the reusable XTP thing that streamlined the migration process. And then Joanne's been helping with any questions in documentation and training that you had. Any comments on how the training and documentation has gone? Has it been helpful? Do we need to do more?
Well, I'll get back to that. Yeah, that XTP, I wish I knew more about that. That was someone who left our project, which is part of the reason why I got involved. But yeah, that was what she used and to crank through the forms quickly.
I mean, yeah, we're still using that old Microsoft technology that you add this XML template part to the form, and then it it sort of adds the logic, the data connections, and the view components all in one fell swoop, and then you just configure it. The new forms designer that we have coming out this year also supports these XTPs. So you're not going to lose any of that ability when you move off of InfoPath Designer.
Right. Well, in terms of documentation and training, what really helped us again was the one-on-one sessions that were, from my perspective anyway, very affordable with Joanne, your staff there.
That's right.
Now I did go through, you had a 5-day Lollapalooza. What was that?
Or free training.
Free training. So I did get on that, but there is some differences there when, particularly for a newbie, such as myself, in terms of if you're using the flavor of Qdabra we're using, where it's form, a lot of that training was on the SharePoint. They were still shredding the SharePoint libraries.
Right.
And so when I was trying to go through it and I wasn't shredding the SharePoint libraries, I got confused. Some of it was good.
Our spring 2021 training should be just for the DBXL user.
Okay. So if I did have a comment on that, then it would be, you're always going to struggle with the newbie, the medium, and the expert. And then particularly with the newbies, matching them to the environment that Qdabra is running would be helpful, would have been helpful to me. But what solved that again was I'd go with Joanne and we'd create a form and I'd get distracted on something else and I'd forget it. Then I'd come back and I'd say, geez, Joanne, can we just do the same thing again? And she would kindly enough did it again. And eventually you pick it up. It's quite, it makes sense once you do a number of them, and it's very satisfying. I'd say, I got a lot of reward out of it, being able to do it.
That's great. It's like Microsoft people say, and they say, only each user uses 20% of the features of Word, but every user uses a different 20%.
There you go.
So it's difficult for us to create one training class that fits all people because everyone's got a different config. But we should definitely do the non-SharePoint one this next cycle.
There you go.
Thanks for the feedback. Right. So let's do a quick demo and show our listeners a form that you've got and the database backend, and then we'll talk about the results and the benefits.
Okay. So our product is Fed Datacheck. You can read more about it on feddatacheck.com if you're interested. It's a product we sell to the federal government. 14 agencies subscribe to us, such as the Department of Education, HUD, Treasury. I'm sure everyone has heard of. What we're doing is ensuring that federal contracts adhere to all the regulations that they must adhere to, thousands of pages of regulations, as well as they're optimally awarded in terms of a certain amount going to small business, appropriate volume being competed versus not competed. So that's the domain we work in. So you can imagine if you are managing federal contracts and you're making an award, you want to ensure that the award adheres to the Buy American Act. Generally speaking, favor American vendors over foreign vendors, and there are a lot of rules associated with that. If you're just starting out in federal contracting, just like you're starting out in programming, you're more apt to make a mistake, I would say. So here's a case where we said they put a wrong code into a contract, in which case that CO, that contracting officer, is going to get an email from us the following day. They click on the link and they would pull up our Qdabra form.
Oh, that's great. So this is the replacement for InfoPath, and this is the Forms Viewer piece, and it looks just like a form would in SharePoint. Right.
So it gives these alphanumeric sequence is the contract identification number. It gives a summary, the name of the data inconsistency that we at Datacheck have given to this particular error in the data entry, the data quality, commissary resale, and or the principal place of performance is inconsistent with the manufacturer code. Now that would mean something if you were a contracting officer.
I
And
see.
then you would, if you were contesting this, you might say something like, the baseballs were purchased to be resold at a military commissary.
I see. So then the yellow goes away, and is it to click out? Does that yellow indicate validation? I guess it kind of does, right?
The yellow just indicates a mandatory field.
Okay.
That we'd like you to fill in, and we automatically pull in your name based on who you were when you logged in to SharePoint. You enter your number and hit save and exit.
And where is it? So that's submitting it then to the database, and it's mapping it to the database, and then the reports are generated from that, right?
Right. So if you want to see the DAT tool, so when you hit submit on that form, it does get saved to a SQL Server database. You can see, well, you mentioned how many of these forms we have out here for this one in particular. I think you saw that there was 1,457. Well, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but when you add up all the different agencies,
yeah,
tens of thousands.
You don't have to worry about archiving, right? You don't have to worry about the limits of SharePoint libraries. Hitting those.
So here's all the various fields: the contracting officer name, contracting officer email address, and that gets saved off the SQL Server.
And then you create the SQL report on top of all that.
Right. So then once that gets saved to the database, we actually, when that is saved to the database, we have the database send out another email for the contracting officer's supervisor to approve that form we just saw. Said, hey, we don't think Treasury ever sells things on a military commissary. That CO put out an exception and said, no, in this case we did. A supervisor would review that form and approve the data entry. And then one of the things we have then is the ability, which is the main reason why we got Qdabra originally, is to enable the reporting. So if you see here, I'm click on that. I went page 8 exceptions. So now I could see how many of these exceptions were approved, how many were not approved, how many are still pending, and all of this is shredded from that form.
That's a beautiful SQL report.
Thank you.
That's great. So let's go back to that slide on the benefits, and we'll wrap this up here. I know you've been with us since 2013. We just did the migration. What is it, about a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Right.
Do you still have that slide deck open with the pros and the cons, the benefits and the results? I forget where we were at.
Here we go.
So
is this the one?
Yeah. That's so we've got. I guess just to summarize, then you're able to move off of InfoPath. That's the big thing for InfoPath Form Services. We're moving you off of the designer here this year with the Form Designer piece. So that's less concern with the death knell, the end of InfoPath coming at some point, probably in 2025, 2026. And but you also got other things. You also got faster performance and a slightly better UI and an easier maintenance design process, right?
Right. Yeah, the forms do. We would have earlier what, they would be slower coming up. Sometimes I think even earlier we'd get a mysterious error message that would pop up on occasion. Now, as you saw, that hasn't been a problem.
That's great to hear.
Speed is,
I want to thank you so much for doing this quick success story with us today. I know
all
it's
right.
been a crazy year. I hope you're healthy, continue to be healthy, and that your new company, Pulsate, is a huge success this year. And I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon.
All right, Patrick. Let's see. Now, you want me to send you? It's actually Pulsate Data, by the way. But
I'm sorry. We'll
FYI.
get that right the next time we do this.
Okay.
I
Let's
did
get
just want to
the.
get through it because
Yep.
there's always going to be these wrinkles.
So if I hit
And
stop recording,
yeah.